Okay, we're good to go.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. I have this right now in presenter mode, which means I can see the PowerPoint slides, but I can't see any of you. So, hello, and I'm going to go back to the introduction slide. So if you haven't already, if you're just getting in here, make sure your cameras are off. That will, during our presentation will probably take about 30 minutes, maybe a little bit less, I don't know. During that time, it would probably be easier for everyone if the cameras were off, and then you might be able to see the three of us as we're speaking and focus on the PowerPoint slides. But we are going to have a little question and answer discussion period after we're done with our slides, and you're welcome to turn your cameras back on at that point. We'll keep our microphones off just because it's noisy, but we'll look at questions in the chat box at that point, and you can turn your microphone on to speak in turns. So if you pin, you're able to set up your Google Classroom, your Google Meet in the layout that you want, that you're able to see us and the PowerPoint slides. So I'm Dr. Scheitz, and I'm the school counselor at Binks Forest, and I have been at Binks Forest for 15 years. I've been a school counselor for 25 years. I've worked with Joe from Panther Run and for all of those years, actually. And we're really happy to do this collaboration, and we're going to be bringing you more of these events. And I will let Nicole and Joe introduce themselves.
Nicole? Oh, your mic is off, Nicole.
Uh-oh.
So that's what happens when you keep your mic off. You forget to put it back on. Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole Martinez. I am the school counselor at Elbridge Gale Elementary. I've been there for, I think this is my 10th year now. Love it. It's been a great 10 years and hope at least for another 10 more.
And I'm Joe Laverso, a counselor at Panther Run Elementary. I've been there since dirt, practically 2 years after it opened. 1993 was my first year at Panther Run, and I've been in the school district since '82. So yeah, I'm one of the dinosaurs that are still walking around. So it's great to be here. I hope everybody is able to grab something new and refreshing from this presentation.
And I will just say before we start, back in Wellington, Joe and I have been here for a really long time, but we used to have events. We haven't had them in the past couple of years, but we used to have parent workshops, and they were open to everybody in Wellington. So we would take turns planning and hosting these events, and host them at our schools with different guest speakers and things like that. And now in this new COVID-19 world where we're doing everything virtually, it's kind of cool because we can have Google Meet meetings, and we're going to try and continue this. We're going to do another one on May 15th, and we have a guest speaker, Dr. Jody Starr. She's a child psychiatrist in Wellington, and she's going to be a guest speaker. So we're going to try and continue this format. It's kind of a innovative and new way of doing things. So for those of you that are just coming on, make sure your microphones are muted, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so our topic today is building your, actually, let me go back to that slide. Building your family toolkit for surviving and thriving in a COVID-19 distance world. So not just getting through it, not just surviving, but hopefully thriving, but in a very different way. So we'll be talking about several different things related to all of the different changes and adjustments that your family has had to make. Some of them really positive, some of them super stressful, and hopefully, we'll give you some ideas. But I'm also looking forward to the end of our meeting when we have our little Q&A, because I'd love to hear from all of you some of the things that you're struggling with and some of the great ideas that you'd like to share with others. So we'll focus a little bit on building our coping skills, how to talk to kids about COVID-19. I have actually spent a lot of time over the past month participating, and actually Nicole and I this week, we actually hosted a webinar for the school counselors in Florida. We had about 450 people there. and talking about bringing our school counseling programs in this world. But I've also participated in a lot of webinars, and I've heard a lot of different things about, advice for parents and things like that. And, COVID-19 and why are we not in school? Of course, kids have a lot of questions, and some of them might be scary. And, sometimes our instinct as adults is to not talk about any of the scary graphic things with kids because they're scared. They don't want to keep them scared. So, but the best advice that I heard this week was kids have bionic eyes and ears. They hear everything. So you can't really protect them. You think that you can. You think that you could just tell them nice, fuzzy, warm and fuzzy things and don't tell them the scary stuff. But they know, and they'll find out whether they hear it or not. They have bionic eyes and ears. Don't treat them like they're fragile, or they will be. So honesty is always best. Now, it doesn't mean that you should be sitting in front of the TV watching every graphic image of them showing very disturbing images in hospital rooms and things like that. That is not kid appropriate, and that could be scary. But sometimes you can't protect your kids from that either because the TV's on in the background. Kids are running around the house and they see these things. So always the best rule of thumb is be honest and have open family conversations. But with that comes honesty and reassurance. So be honest with them, but not to scare them. In fact, reassure them, because most people who, even those that, with all the safety precautions that we're taking, there are people who are getting sick. But even most of those people who are getting sick, they do get better. So it's a way to frame it. Nicole, I'll let you read this one.
Sure. So this is actually a slide, or I should say a picture that I found. And, a lot of what's being recognized on the news are the heroes, like the doctors and the nurses. And I think one thing that we kind of fail to overlook is, we have a lot of little heroes out there, and that's our kids. The last 5 or 6 weeks, these kids have gone through a phenomenal adjustment. Everything or most of the activities that they really enjoy, whether that be socializing with their friends at school or their after school activities, all of those things have been taken away. And, them along with us have been, set into this world of this socially isolated world. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But, we really need to take into consideration that, this has been a huge adjustment for them. Their hearts and their minds are probably racing with thoughts about, trying to wrap their heads around a clear understanding about what is going on in the world. But, we'll talk about in a few minutes about some communication techniques and things to talk to your kids about. But, we really need to understand from their point of view that this is a huge, huge adjustment.
It certainly is for all of us, adults and kids. So with these new challenges, one of them is, we're socially distanced, where we're not with our friends. The kids aren't with each other. We're not with our coworkers. We're not with some family members. We have some, maybe grandparents and our parents, and we can't go visit them. I mean, that is really, I'm old. I don't know. And I've never lived through something like this, and none of us have lived through something like this. So that's a huge adjustment. The unpredictability of this, we can't really say, oh, well, this is going to go on for the next 14 days, and then it'll be okay. Or on July 22nd, then it's going to be okay. No one has the answers, not even the smartest scientists. So it's hard to give kids concrete answers. We don't know when things will go back to normal, if things will go back to normal. And there's a loss of our regular normalcy, the things that, we do this on Mondays, we do this at 3:00. All these routines are just kind of a little bit jumbled. And that, anytime you're away from your normal routine, it can be stressful. So you could be dealing with fear and anxiety yourself, fear and anxiety that your kids are facing. And so we'll talk today a little bit about, what are some techniques that you can use for yourself and also as a family. The financial uncertainty, well, there's certainly nothing in the world that causes more extreme anxiety and stress than being panicked about your basic necessities and how you're going to survive financially. And even though that seems like that's a grown-up problem, kids are very much impacted by all of our grown-up problems. So, and then, of course, just the whole multitasking that we're all being asked to do. So we're working at home. We've set up a little space in my office and here, and then you know, my child is going to sit at that table. So there's a lot of you know, juggling the responsibilities of you getting your own work done and the kids. And I talk to the kids all the time. We have live events, and sometimes the kids, like, they come to my events because they just want someone to hang out with. And when you ask them how things are, you know, some of them have like real things, like, you know, things are okay, but, you know, my mom is really busy because she's trying to get her work done. And then there's, like, you know, they have little siblings, and little siblings, of course, are time consuming. They take a little bit more attention than the older kids. So, you know, even with the best intentions, the kids notice that, you know, no one really has time to sit and hang out with me. So before we move on to the next slide, I just kind of said a few things. If you want to just type in, what are some of the challenges that you faced? Just kind of come a list. We'll refer to some of those things in the list, and we'll use them also during our Q&A. And if you think of things as we go, please continue to just type your thoughts in the chat box. And when we get to our final slide, we'll go through that chat box and address some of those. So while you guys are typing, I'll just move on to this next one. So we're talking about kind of putting together a toolkit. And there's a couple different ways that you can look at this. One is like a first aid kit. The first aid kit is, you know, when there's an emergency situation, you grab the kit and there's some perfect little thing that you can use to, you know, like a little Band-Aid to help fix the problem. Or your little tool case, your little, you know, your toolbox of what are all your tools that help you cope with things. Now, the idea is that you could put this together as a little family thing. Many of the stressors that are associated with what's going on right now, they're not kid stressors, they're not parent stressors. They affect everyone. You know, all of this affects everyone from the youngest to the oldest. And most of it is really not stuff that we can do anything about. This is, you know, Nicole and I have been doing a lot of counseling activities, what we were talking about. And we have one that's called the circle of control. And in the inside of the circle, you put, you know, all of the things that you can control. And then all the outside stuff is stuff you can't control. Like, you can't control the virus, but you can control your responses and things like that. So there's a whole lot of things that we can't control, but there's a lot of it that is predictable and you can plan for it. So if you know that something is going to be stressful and overwhelming, we can kind of pull together our tools to deal with that. So here's a suggestion. So the suggestion is to kind of create a toolbox, now a toolkit. You can do this in two ways. You can either actually have a box, you know, it could actually be a toolbox, or it could be something that you create. The key to doing this is actually just do it as a family. So it's not just something that, you know, you go in your office and you craft together something, you throw in things and say, here, family, this is what we're going to use. It's something that it's really more the experience and the interaction that you're having with your family, and it facilitates conversations. So you talk about predicting the tough spots. So what are some things that you think are going to be difficult? You know, what are the times of day that are going to be hard? What are some of the problems that we as a family might have to face? You know, the fact that we're in the house together all the time and we're getting on each other's nerves sometimes. Or, you know, I've asked you to clean your room, you're not listening, and parents' frustrations levels are rising. So those are called our tough spots. You might want to add some stress buster tools. Joe's going to be talking about more of these activities. But they could be tangible items, you know, like stress balls and things like that, bubbles. You could put these in the toolbox. They could be lists of activities. So some of the activities that Joe is going to be suggesting, you can actually write these out or draw little pictures of them, put them in the toolbox as reminders of things that you can do. Coupons, the idea of coupons is like, you know, you can have like a coupon that says, I need a break, or, you know, I'm going to cash in my coupon right now for 30 minutes of running outside. Bubbles, some kind of interactive family activities. So you could be creative, but the idea is that you have a conversation and you put things together. Now, the other thing, aside from the dealing with stress, this is a pretty interesting time. This is going to be, for a lot of people, like, you're going to talk to, your grandkids about this, and they'll be talking to their grandkids about living through this pandemic. So you might want to create positive experience. There's one family, maybe some of you know her. I won't tell her name, but she works at Binks, and her and her family every day for like 2 weeks, they had like a family costume night. Every night they would all gather in like a theme. And they would take pictures of them in their themed costume for the night. It was really fun. But like, these are really fun memories. And these are things that you can kind of create your own time capsule or journal or things like that to help remember what's going on. The other thing is pandemic parenting. So some of that stressful stuff. Give yourself permission to meet your own needs. That's kind of like the whole oxygen mask thing. Take care of yourself first, because if you're at your end, you're not going to be the best and most patient and most fun parent to hang out with. You're going to be like short fuse parent, which we've all been. Acknowledge and validate your child's feelings. So your kids are upset or scared about something. The correct response is not, don't worry about it, or it's no big deal. You're just making a big deal about it. Acknowledge that this is how they're feeling. And validate that and talk about it. Be that safe person that you can have that conversation with. Now, a lot of you that are in this meeting, you're in this meeting because you have elementary school kids, because we're elementary school counselors, but that doesn't mean that they're your only kids. So some of you might also have teenagers in the house, and they might have different needs than these elementary school kids. They might be more resistant. They might not want all the family time and let's play family games. They might want to hang out in their room and do nothing and veg and watch video games, and they don't want to be bothered. So just as you would as a parent any other time of the year, outline your expectations, but realize that you'll probably have to compromise with those older kids more. Compliment them often, just like Nicole said when she read that thing. They're going through a lot. Let them know how proud you are of all of their adjustments. Don't feel like you have to plan every moment of their day. You might have a whole lot of screen time rules in the real world, but sometimes this screen time is actually their only connection to their friends, and that is really important. We once read a book. It's called The Good Enough Parent. Don't compare yourself to everybody else. Those of you who are like scrolling through Facebook and everybody seems to be doing amazing things. They're learning foreign languages. They're out in the pool. They're doing family bike rides. And you think, oh my God, they have it so together. Don't compare yourself to everybody else. Be your own parent. You don't have to be the most amazing thing. You don't have to be teaching everybody another language. Be the good enough parent, but be present with your kids. And establish some kind of daily social connection family ritual. Maybe that's at dinner time, game time, but use this time to kind of create your own new rituals. Nicole.
Okay, yes. So here we're going to talk a little bit about routine and space. And we have to remember that these guys are really used to a routine. School is a routine. School is a very scheduled part of their day. So when we're talking about routine and space, we want to really try to stick to somewhat of a regular schedule for these kids. Now, does the schedule have to be as structured as a school schedule? No, but consistency is definitely the key. Try to make sure that they get up, that they eat, and they go to bed at somewhat near their normal times. Does it have to be their regular bedtime during the school year? No, but can there be some flexibility? Absolutely. I have a high schooler and a college age child, and my high schooler, now her schedule is all off. She stays up till God knows what time of the night on the phone, and then she doesn't wake up till 11 or 12, and then so my advice to those of you with younger kids is try to keep their schedule as consistent as it would look like in a regular school day schedule. And Try and make sure too that they have their own study space. I know in my house, there's 4 of us now working from home. My husband always works from home, but now there's me and both of my girls working from home, and we're, under 1,600 square feet. So to try to find at least a defined space that your child can have their own scheduled study space. Try to make sure that it's free of any background noise, distractions. Maybe it's just a little tiny table in the area of their room with their laptop, but try to make it their own private kind of workspace. And on the bottom of the slide, it just talks about, once you've established your, what your picture of homeschool routine looks like, consistency is, of course, the goal. But remember, not every day is going to be consistent, and that's okay. If your reading time or your time outside stays the same each day, consider yourself even a little bit ahead. If there's a part of the day that stays consistent, then you've won the points for that day. Okay, so the next slide talks about setting up a schedule. So I'm gonna share with you guys in a few minutes some samples of some schedules, but create your schedule as a family. If you create a schedule for the kids and you don't have their input, that means you do not have their buy-in, which means they probably will not follow it. So it's very, very important that when you do make your schedule, or if you have already and it's not working, time to make a new schedule. Sit down at the table, get a piece of poster board, get some markers, make it pretty, put some stickers on it. But make sure it's something that you and your children do together. Ask, what do they want to see on the schedule? What times do they want to do it? So the more you have their input and buy-in, the more likely they are going to stick to the schedule. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about bribes. So I'm going to tell you from the school counselor side, of course, we work a lot with kids with behavioral issues. And some of you as parents may be seeing your kids showing some behavioral issues that you may not have seen before. That could be just due to stress. That could be due to adjustment. That could be due to just being in the house and being separated from their friends. So as school counselors, especially with the younger kids, we work on developing behavior plans and incentives with children in order to change the behavior. And often when I talk to teachers about behavior, I tell them it takes a lot of work to change. And if you really want to change the behavior, you're going to have to put in the work to help change that behavior. So don't be afraid to put in a behavior plan and some sort of expectation guideline of what you expect your child to do every day. And if they do it, make a chart, give them a sticker, give them a pack of gummy worms or whatever they're driven by. It doesn't have to be anything huge. But if there's something that they want to work on earning, then make that one of their goals. Say, make it a weekly goal. If the child is really challenging to where every hour you're seeing a behavior problem, make it an hourly goal. Whatever you need to do for you and the child to get through the day is what I would advise. Print out your schedule, make sure you go over every single morning, say, okay, here's the plan for the day. But, try again, like we talked about earlier, stay as consistent as possible. Not every minute has to be planned. There has to be some availability for downtime, especially because most of you are working from the house too. So you're not going to have the time to stay on top of the child's schedule at every minute because you have your own work schedule. So make sure there are some breaks in there. And we're going to talk a little bit, Joe's going to go over some break activities in a little bit, but, make sure that the schedule is flexible, that it's not rigid, because if it can't be stuck to, then it's going to lose its luster very quickly. So here's just an example of some sample schedules. And unfortunately, what I see on the screen is really tiny, and my printout is really tiny. So I'm gonna try to go through it as much as possible. But as you can see, it's a very, very flexible schedule. This is just an example. You can use either one of these to create your own family schedule. You can ask your children, what part of the schedule do you like? What part don't you like? You know, what part do you want to see on our schedule at home? But make sure when you are creating your schedule that it works for all of you, not just the kids. So this slide has a little kind of funny thing on it. Us as counselors, you know, Randy had just mentioned that we're doing a lot of Google Meets with our grade levels. We each have a social emotional learning Google Classroom for our kids at our schools. And we have times, Randy does a happy hour. I do like a Talk to Me Tuesday where the kids can just jump on and we do different activities. But, you know, we have definitely learned a lot about the kids now that we are connecting to them virtually. I think I've met pretty much everybody's pet by now. I've seen, let's see, cats, dogs. I saw a hamster and a bunny. I've seen a snake. I've seen a bearded dragon. So I've seen everybody's pets, and I've heard all sorts of funny background noises. So, you know, this world of virtual learning is, you know, does allow for some humor, you know, but we have to remember that unfortunately right now, the computer is our kids' connection to the world, or a phone is their connection to the world. But find, you know, one of the points on this is physical distance is not social distance. You know, the CDC and the news is now saying, you know, you need to stay so many feet apart from each other. Well, that doesn't mean we have to socially distance. We just have to look for new ways to socially connect with people. You know, every Friday at 5 o'clock, I get together with my girlfriends and we do like a little virtual happy hour. You know, I don't physically get to see them, but I see them on the screen. You know, you as grown-ups, schedule that time with your friends to get together via Google Meets or Zoom and connect with your coworkers or your friends. Same with the kids. You know, a lot of us as parents, we always try to limit the screen time that we allow our kids to have. Unfortunately, in what we're going through right now, you know, we have to be a little bit more flexible on that screen time, especially if they're, you know, using that screen as a form to connect with kids, whether it's a FaceTime call or a, you know, Google Meets with their teacher or whatnot. So, you know, even though our physical distance has to be limited now, that doesn't mean that our social distance has to be. You know, board games, card games, long walks, bike rides, all of that old-fashioned stuff works. I will say personally that this, you know, pandemic has really allowed me to connect with my kids in ways that I probably wouldn't, because everybody would be going their different ways. My high schooler would be with her friends. My college daughter would be out driving around with her friends, and we wouldn't get to have this time. So as frustrating as this time can be for so many, really try to get the value out of it that you can. And try not to lose each other in separate online worlds. I know sometimes myself, I'm on my phone looking on Facebook, my daughter's on her phone looking on TikTok. You know, it's, you know, we get lost in these digital worlds and we lose that time to really connect face to face. So, you know, try not to get lost too much in those screen times and spend that, you know, that time as a family together.
Hey guys, this is me, Mr. Laverso from Panther Run. Thank you for sharing part of your day with us. I'm going to share with you some things about de-stressing, like the little cloud says there, keep your brains and bodies busy. Some of these things you may be familiar with. Maybe there's some new things. Hopefully, maybe it'll resurrect some old ideas you used to have. But Nicole mentioned a few things already. I think there were some great ideas about maintaining the social connections and establishing routines in the schedule. That goes so far in giving you structure in the home and giving the kids a sense of structure and normalcy, because there's nothing really normal about what we're going through right now. This is unfortunately our new normal. And we don't know how long it's going to be when we can get back to what we used to have. But so we have to make the best of what we've got right now. And they do take their cues from us in how we respond to times of stress. So if we're often freaking out and having, meltdowns ourselves, then the poor kids are going to be mimicking that and reflecting that as well. And that's not to say that we don't have those moments sometimes. We're human, and that's okay too. We're going to make mistakes, and that's all right. We have to pick up, learn from it, move on. So give yourself some slack, and, just take in what you can, do what you can to move on and help the boys and girls. They do need the physical activity. That's if you can work that in during the day, take those breaks. Again, Nicole mentioned the screen time. I think the kids are experiencing more screen time than ever before. And unfortunately, it's necessary for the learning, but it can be too much. I know some parents have reached out to me already and said that their child is having trouble sleeping at night or falling asleep. And they never had issues before, but it could be related to the increased screen time. So again, you have to break it up. Maybe do more physical activity inside. Maybe it's stretches and doing the PE warm-ups that they do when they're in school. They have PE warm-ups that they can do in place and without knocking over furniture and lamps. But if you can get outside, that's great too. Then you can do some running and biking. I like what Nicole said about the old-fashioned stuff. The stuff that I used to do as a kid before we had iPhones and computers and videos. But that's I see people in my own neighborhood. They're out there and they're doing stuff. And I see people I've never met before. So it's pretty cool. It does release up all that pent up energy. It releases endorphins, and those endorphins help reduce actually the stress hormone. So there is not just a psychological benefit, but a physiological benefit. So there is something to it. And maybe physical activity outside isn't your thing. So how about music? How about singing? How about dancing, being crazy, doing videos? Now, be honest, I know you've seen some videos on YouTube. Some crazy stuff is out there. Maybe you can contribute to that. That would be kind of fun. Don't be afraid to be silly with your kids. They'll have a blast, and so will you. And again, that relieves the stress. It releases the endorphins, and the stress levels come down. We need it desperately at this time, if more than ever. Again, music may not be your thing. You might sing out of tune and your dance is out of time. That's okay. But if that's still not your thing, how about painting, crafting? There's a lot of things out there. Again, the research. It's amazing how much research is out there about this stuff. The visual arts have been linked to resilience in stress. And an idea I came across that I thought was pretty cool. If you have an old shower curtain, you can take that out back and get a can of shaving cream, and then the kids can draw and paint on that thing with their finger, and then when they're all done, you can hose them down, shower curtain and the kids and everybody. So I guess sometimes the spontaneous stuff will help too. And again, it's what works for you. Again, if that's not your thing, find something else. There's always something out there. I was amazed when I was researching for different ideas, how much different stuff there is for all of us. Now, there's a time and place for excitement and running and jumping and playing. And then there's a time, especially at the end of the day, to slow down and turn our brains off. And that's hard right now, too. Again, with the change in schedules and everything is different, and sitting still in front of a computer screen. I'm having trouble sitting still right now. I've got to move in my seat. I can relate to how your poor boys and girls are feeling. So if they're listening, I'm with you guys. Someone mentioned a snow globe. I didn't know they still had those things. I saw those when I was little, so I guess they're still around. But if you don't have one, you can make one. There were actual craft projects on. There you go.
Of course, Randy has a snow globe.
I have anything you name, I could grab it in 2 seconds.
You would do well on Let's Make a Deal. So anyway, that's a cool craft project you can do, sitting there watching that snow globe settle. Again, it gets them to focus, to relax. What are we trying to do? We're trying to slow down our heart rate, slow down our breathing. Quiet time. People like to meditate, pray, do yoga, just sit and self-reflect. People like to light essential oil type candles, or just do the essential oils. There we go. Boy, Miss Randy, you're all set there. Visualization techniques have been around for ages. Therapists use that a lot. Closing your eyes, building a picture inside of your mind. of your happy place, thinking about how it looks, how it smells, how it feels to be there in that happy place. And again, so last week, 2 weeks ago, a teacher at school at Panther Run sent me this link to the virtual calming room. I strongly recommend you check it out later on. Not right now. Don't leave us. Check it out later. It's a great resource for visual relaxation, soothing, hours and hours of stuff. It's like a clearinghouse. You don't have to go searching anywhere. It's all right there. And you can see things like a fireplace. You could see a waterfall, rainfall. You hear beautiful, soft music from a guitar or from a piano or from a flute. But all this variety. Again, there's so much good out there if we look for it and find it and kind of push aside all the negative stuff. Next slide, please. So an old tried and true, our go-to is, of course, the slow, deep breathing. Again, taking those slow, deep breaths, holding it for a few seconds, slowly breathing it out. You can do that anytime, anywhere, and that's really handy. We try it in school all the time, especially when we have some boys and girls who are having a moment. You know, we start with the breathing, and we may have to do it a number of times before we can get them to calm down. It's good for us, it's good for them, and for the little ones too. If you want to refer to it as belly breathing, they might get into that. You know, think of their stomach as a balloon, and taking a deep breath and holding up that air in their balloon and then slowly releasing it. Again, it's as the picture shows, hopefully the calm while the storm is going on. It'll help keep us from getting too overwhelmed. This is a difficult time. Trust me, I really feel for you parents trying to be parents and teachers and working from home. God bless you. It's never been done before like this, and hopefully we won't have to do it again. But I commend you for making it through and coming in to join us and hopefully get a few more suggestions.
And this one, you know, Joe just mentioned a whole bunch of things. Really, the rule of thumb is, you know, this is like Joe said, a problem that no one's ever had before. But I'm guaranteed that every single person watching this right now, you've had a whole lot of problems, all kinds of problems. And some of them have been real, true crisis situations. So, you know, I'm sure you as parents, this is not the first crisis that you've had to deal with. This is not the first problem that your kids have had to deal with. So even though this situation is new, what has worked for you in the past? So those same things that worked for you for getting through other tough times in your life, use those same tools now. You might discover some new things that work for you. And hopefully some of the things that we just talked about will be things that, you know, it's easy to kind of look at a PowerPoint slide and say, oh yeah, I could try that, but then not do it. So you actually have to like look at the PowerPoint slide, get the idea, and say, actually, I'm gonna try it, and implement those things and kind of step out of your comfort zone. But most of all, kind of rely on what's always helped you in the past, and use the tools that you already have.
Health and wellness. Well, everything really we're talking about is health and wellness. Again, researching online the dimensions of wellness. Somebody says there's 5. Someone said 6. Oh, there's 7. How about 10? Well, we settled on 6. It makes a nice little graphic there with the pie chart. But it's true. You got all of these things here that are overlapping and interrelated. You know, it's the social, the emotional, the spiritual, environmental, intellectual, physical, well-being. It's all, everything we're talking about is about that. Like we mentioned before, you know, connecting with friends, connecting with old friends or young friends, but people from the past, maybe you haven't connected with. They say that actually is a boost to our mental health and our resilience. Cooking and baking with your kids, that's fun. You can make that a math lesson, you know, working on fractions, doubling your recipe, you know, 2/3 of a cup. How many cups is a full cup? You know, things like that. Anyway, emotional, you know, the positives. Focus on the positive. Try not to dwell too much on the negative, although there's plenty of negative out there. Accepting mistakes. We make mistakes. I'm making mistakes during this presentation, but I'm plowing through it. So we got to do that. That's how we manage our stress. The spiritual, as it mentions there, you know, being part of a group, having a sense of belonging, maybe having everybody help each other do chores instead of maybe everyone has a specific chore. Everyone can help with one chore. Everyone can help over here. Outside, the environmental, the garden, planting a garden, planting flowers, gives us a sense of accomplishment when we see the flowers didn't actually die, they grew. Whoa, how about that? Certainly plenty of intellectual stuff going on with the schoolwork, but how about some fun puzzles, word games? And again, the physical, the exercise, the nutrition. Don't forget the sleep. We need our rest. All of that comes together. You know, we've talked about this. I know, I'm sure Nicole and Randy all year, we talk about this, but it's more important now than ever, you know, to have all these pieces working, all the cylinders firing. We can, and like I said, there are going to be times when we're going to slip up, we're going to fall, but we got to pick up and keep moving.
And one of the things, just to finish up what Joe was talking about wellness is, like we talked about, Randy and I both have a social emotional learning Google Classroom. And one of the things I do every Wednesday, my Wednesday theme is Wellness Wednesdays. And I focus on a different area of wellness each Wednesday, and I post some videos, and sometimes I just do some recorded videos of myself talking about wellness. I usually post an activity. This week we talked about intellectual wellness. I talked about intellectual wellness with the kids and what was a goal that they had. And one idea that I kind of stole from Randy, we like to steal each other's ideas, or I should say share, not steal, was the kids really, really love recognition. And I've noticed the more activities I post where I recognize the kids' work, because you have to realize they're used to having their work recognized from their teachers. And now you guys as parents, you need to play that role in recognizing the kids' work. We virtually as counselors are trying to play that role in recognizing the kids' work. So, Randy showed you a mindfulness jar of glitter. I had the kids one Monday for Mindfulness Monday make those jars, and they sent me pictures, and I put those pictures back in my stream so the kids could see all the other kids mindfulness jars. So, it was a lot of fun. They really, they miss that engagement. They miss that engagement with the adults in their lives, whether it be us as counselors or their teachers. So this almost last slide is just some resources and apps that we put together. YouTube is phenomenal for these resources. I love Cosmic Kids Yoga. When I was doing my yoga class with the kids at Elbridge Gale, I used Cosmic Kids all the time. She is phenomenal. I mean, she does a yoga that's trolls themed, that's, Minecraft themed, and it's great activity. It's very fast paced. It was hard for me to keep up. On a little bit of a slower beat is the yoga with Adrian. This is probably better for like the 4th, 5th graders. Just some really good yoga activities. Go Noodle is something we use a lot in school that you guys can now use at home. Fablefy has a lot of mindfulness activities. I post a lot of Fablefy stuff from YouTube. So those are all really good, exercise, mindfulness, yoga-based type of videos. Joe's virtual calming room that he mentioned, the link is on here. Some parenting tips, some mindfulness classes for kids, and then just some more activities that are just very, very easy and not expensive to engage with your kids. The thing is just making it fun. I just saw one of the comments on the chat came up. One parent said, and we'll talk about the chat in a minute, but one of the comments is, we love making forts and using them as reading centers.
Yeah, I saw that. That's cool.
It's just, it's an area of creativity, and all kids love forts, and they're going to be more apt to read if you make it fun. Most of the kindergarten, it's important to make, you got to make the activity fun. All right, Randy, all yours.
Well, and then here are some resources, if you really are ever in a situation where you need someone to talk with, you need some extra assistance, whether that's mental health related, financial, any kind of, crisis or that you might be having. Here are some school district resources. Also, if you're aware, you can call 211 on any phone. And that will get you to a community help, and they can hook you up with resources. And here was another one, the National Child Stress and Traumatic Stress Network. So
211 is fantastic. I used to work for them way back in the day, and they're a really great wealth of resources.
So here's how the rest of this is going to work. And I do want to promote here before I take this slide down. So on May 15th, same time, it's a Friday at 3 o'clock. So not next Friday, but the Friday after, we're going to have Dr. Jody Starr. She's going to be coming. We're still working on the actual specific topic that we're going to be doing, but it's going to be related to mental health in children, and May is Mental Health Month. So look for that invitation. If you want to make sure that we don't miss you and you get the link, send us an email. You can go ahead and, well, you just email your school counselor, and our email addresses are right here. We're going to get to the chat box. During this whole presentation, I have not been able to see me or you. So while I'm in present mode, I'm kind of blind. So I'm going to let you guys kind of copy what you need to off this slide, and then I'm going to get out of present mode, and we'll be able to look at the chat box and answer questions. If you want to put your cameras on, you can. I don't know if we said it at the beginning of the meeting, but we are recording. So if you don't want to be on the recording, then you can keep your camera off. But if you want to turn on your cameras, we can do that. And then we'll just put our microphones on if we're if you're asking a question. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
There we go. I'm all the way at the top of the chat, so I can start on a couple.
Look at all these people.
So one comment says, being together as a family 24/7 causes tempers to flare and requires all of us to be more accepting. We're usually not all under the same room at the same time, so many hours per week until now. We are talking through disagreements more now. Togetherness can be the best thing and the worst thing. It's just kind of, I think, a matter how you make it. I will tell you, the first week when the four of us in this house were all working together, we were ready to kill each other. I have a 16 and a 19-year-old girl, and it's tough. My college kid came back. She didn't want to come back from college. She wanted to still be in college. So, it was definitely an adjustment the first couple of weeks. I think now we're all, at least in my house, really trying to be more understanding of everybody else. And I think that's something as parents we need to stress to our families is, we all need to be a little bit more understanding. Definitely it does cause the tempers to flare. I am glad that things seem to be better, but schedules do help. Schedules do help. Scheduling some family time in there does help. Some outdoor time, some fresh air. I took a walk today with my daughter, and she said it was the first time she's been out of the house since Monday. I'm like, that's not good. We got to get outside. Being cooped up will definitely cause all of us to get on each other's nerves.
I agree with that.
I see biggest challenge is meltdowns during schoolwork. I would highly suggest the schedule. And I know this parent, this is one of my parents, and she has a little one and some older ones in 5th grade. The incentives work wonders, especially for little ones. Break the reading, break the math, break the science. You finish this activity, you get a sticker on your chart, you get this many stickers. That earns you what? Make the goals concrete and get their buy-in for it. So what do you want to earn? Yes, Randy.
I also, when this first started, a few weeks ago, and we first started this, homeschool kind of distance learning thing, I did hear from a lot of parents, and they were mostly like kindergarten and 1st grade parents, because it was a really kind of frustrating situation for them. First of all, they don't really, even though they know their children, of course they know their children, they're not their child's teacher. They don't really know how the teacher delivered that instruction. So they're getting frustrated, why don't you understand this? Because they're not, early childhood educators. And so they were getting frustrated and expecting their children to sit and do. But even in the real school, they wouldn't be sitting and doing. They would be breaking things up. So don't feel like your kids need to have 3 hours, sit and finish all your work. Really break it up, because they didn't function like that in the real school. They're certainly not going to function like that at home. So don't put that kind of pressure on them or yourself.
One other one says, my kids struggle with mom and dad being home, yet not always available because of work. I could totally understand that. And I think that's also where, you know, if there's certain periods of the day that are more difficult for you and your husband as far as their work schedule, you know, maybe have a sign or a visual sign, build that into your schedule. You know, that might be an option. I don't know if Randy and Joe have any other ideas there, but it's challenging when everybody is working from home under the same roof. They think every day and all day is mommy and daddy time.
Right. Well, I put a sign outside my door when I'm unavailable and lets people know, even the adults, that, you know, I'm on a phone, I'm on a Google Meet, you know, I can't be interrupted. You know, pretend I'm not here, I'm at work, you know. But I think for parents, especially with the little kids, you're going to have to break it up, you know, into smaller chunks, you know. So maybe you come out every hour and you interact with your boys and girls for 10 minutes or something, you know. Again, come up with a schedule that works for you, you know, so that you can tend to their needs, but yet still get your work done. Got to work together. It's like Nicole said, everybody has to understand everybody else's deal, you know, and the little ones have a hard time sometimes grasping that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 10-year-old son wants to lose himself in videos. Well, that sounds like an escape, obviously.
Yeah, I saw that question too. But I will say, you know, the video games also, as the video game addiction, but it's also their social connection to other kids. Like, it's all they talk about. So, like, sometimes, like, those video games, like, I had my live event today, and I couldn't keep these two boys from, like they couldn't stop talking about Minecraft, but it was like they were socially bonding over, I didn't know what they were talking about. I couldn't follow along with their conversation, but they were certainly connected. So in some way, you know, that's a social connection to everybody else, is kind of playing the same games and playing with each other. But, you know, you do have to set your boundaries and your time limits for that. And
have to be limited.
Use that as something that they've earned. Do this, then you get this much time.
Yeah, moderation is the key, I think.
Yeah.
It has to be balanced. Yeah.
Biggest challenge is getting on a schedule. My son doesn't see the need for one, and he argues, debate, pushes back on any structure right now. I mean, I'm a firm believer in, you know, you do what I'm asking you to do, you get the consequences for that. And if you fail to do what I'm asking you to do, then there's, you know, or you get the rewards and then you get the consequences. So if you know, these kids need structure. And I feel if you're getting pushback or whatnot, especially with the older kids, if they have a cell phone, say, okay, you know, if you're not going to abide by the rules in this house right now that we have set together, that we made this schedule together, that, you know, there's going to have to be a consequence given. I think, you know, the hard part about all of this is, you know, I personally, you know, it's going to be hard to put forth a consequence if I'm busy working or whatnot. And sometimes it's a lot more easy just to say, okay, fine, whatever, go have your phone, go do whatever. But in the end, you know, you're going to get more of that argument and debate and pushback if you don't stay firm on
the other thing is, though, make sure that your schedule is realistic. So
Yeah.
if your schedule is torture, then you're going to get pushback. And if the schedule is something that you can't monitor because you're busy and you're not going to monitor whether they're on their phone or whatnot, then you've kind of set an unrealistic expectation that's kind of doomed to fail. So if it's not working, then kind of try and figure out maybe a more, a less resistant type of schedule that they're involved in. Otherwise, it's mom's schedule and it's annoying and I don't want to do it.
True, but you know, if they haven't had much of a schedule up to now, and then you try to implement one, they are going to be pushing back. It's like when we develop behavior plans at school. It may take a week before a child finally gets into it. You know, they're going to push back, but once they realize, no, this is it, it's reasonable, you know, we're sticking to it. It might get worse before it gets better.
And that's why we talked earlier about the consistency. Is if you're going to make a schedule or you're going to build, you know, a schedule with incentives built into it, you've got to stick to it, or else, you know, kids see the weakness, and if there's any deviation to that schedule, they're going to get you on it, and then that schedule is going to lose all its credibility. So you know, consistency. If you're going to take the time to do it, you know, just like we talk about behavior plans, you got to stay steadfast.
But make sure with your schedules, don't leave all the fun free time for the end of the day.
No.
Like make sure that that you have that also like early on in the day. So it's not like, oh, if I can only make it till dinner time, then we'll do something fun. Like you gotta make sure their day is fun also.
Yeah. They can't last that long.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Power struggles, bedtime. Yeah. I would think with the bedtime, we probably have to start early, you know, with the winding down, with the slowing down, you know, some of those relaxation techniques, some of those activities.
And the bedtime too, you know, if they're playing very engaging video games right before they go to bed, that could be a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So, turn off the electronics well before bedtime. Yes. True.
I had a student, a mom who emailed me a couple weeks ago whose little boy was having trouble going to bed. And I actually, you know, I actually sent them a ton of like mindfulness videos and calm down videos that they can try like right before they go to bed, because, you know, the little boy was basically playing video games up until he was going to bed. And that, you know, that's definitely going to cause some problems with sleep. So.
Hey, Joshua Shaw. That's a really awesome comment I'm reading. We do blast from the past dinners where we prepare a meal that my wife or I used to eat when we were kids.
Oh, gee.
I love that. That's
my parent.
That's great. I really like that idea.
And then I see a Sesame Street launch belly breathing videos with Rosita and Cookie Monster. It's very helpful. Yes, they've actually put out a lot of mindfulness breathing. Actually, Randy and I think, used the belly breathing videos a couple weeks ago. So,
but they also have a lot of specific COVID-19 videos that Sesame Street has put out also.
Oh, cool.
Yep. I see a good idea here for scavenger hunt walks. Mr. Florio, we take movement and snack breaks, play tag, also getting him to move his torture. So now we do scavenger hunt walks where he and I pick up what we were looking for. The greatest thing about the internet is you can find a scavenger hunt for anything. So, you know, print out those sheets and take a walk and see if you can find those things. Positive affirmations, drawing sidewalk chalk. Sidewalk chalk has now made the huge comeback with COVID-19. I see all sorts of drawings on the sidewalk as I walk through my neighborhood.
Yeah,
so essential oils can be very helpful. I know Joe had mentioned that. Mr. Shaw, I see you're mentioning things about assignments, and somebody had suggested you can actually go into the Google Classroom and then the classwork, and it shows you the assignments. But another one of my parents had suggested, I see Mr. Shaw, you had mentioned about bulletin boards. One of the other 5th grade parents from Elbridge Gale said that they basically have 3 different small bulletin boards in their child's room. One was math, and one was science, and one was language arts. And it talked about, you know, which assignment was due when for each subject, and that really helped her child become organized. So that was just an idea that I heard.
I like that. Color therapy. I don't know about color therapy. Any other questions? If anybody wants to turn on their microphone and ask a comment or share a suggestion. We've kind of been through most of the chat box.
Miss Dooley, I see your comment there. As a high school teacher, I have no clue how to teach a 1st grader, and I'm falling behind and I feel terrible. Miss Dooley, you have 2 older boys who could definitely help Nora. So I would build an incentive in for them to help their sister get through her daily work, because I know those boys could help her.
We've played a lot of games, Nicole and I, in our virtual My Happy Hour and her live event. So one of the things that we found is we do a lot of live games, which is really fun. And I do like a recorded show every Friday for our families. And I talk about some of the games that we've played during the week, but I really do it so that I can teach the families and that they can play these games at home with their families. So like one of the games that we played was Apples to Apples. So in the real apples to apples game, there's green cards and red cards, and the green cards have adjectives on them. Like this one, it says zany. And the red cards are all these random words. So if you're playing the real game, you match it up. But if you play the way that we've been playing, I have them like gather up all of these items, and I put up the word zany. That means crazy, funny, wacky, and then they have to like find an item that matches this, and there's a judge. But that's something that you could do like at home. You could either do it with cards, or you can have them write down adjectives, and then you go on like a little scavenger hunt and you try and find the best thing that represents that. So it's active, it's running around, it's really funny. These games are funny. We've had some other like discussion kind of games, or 5-second rule where you hold up a card like animals that are pets, and they have to say it like really fast, like dog, cat, bird. But so then there's a ton of questions like that. So if you don't own games, you can make games.
Have the kids make a game,
Yeah,
and play it together.
Oh, this was the other one. Nicole actually discovered this one, the G Drawings. It's a YouTube site, GUH. And they're basically like little drawing tutorials. We put it on slow speed and we draw along with it. They teach you how to draw little puppies and cartoon characters.